You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, Webb City provides a free way for people to get tested for COVID-19.
Warm weather today, freezing cold tomorrow, and a full moon in between. We'll have the latest from the Skywatch Weather Center.
And we'll introduce you to a group of men who've discovered the time-honored tradition of knitting. All that and more coming up.
Most Watched News starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. People in Webb City have a new option for free COVID-19 testing. Ivy Medical opened a new testing site at 115 North Madison Street. The site is open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Saturday. It offers free rapid antigen and PCR testing. No appointment or health insurance is required. You can just drive up or walk in and get tested. Then you can either wait for your results or have them emailed.
All sites have been absolutely slammed. The main reason that we need to be here is the hospitals and stuff aren't doing COVID testing anymore. So all the flow is coming through here.
Officials say the site will stay open as long as demand requires. The recent Omicron surge continues to take its toll on hospitals, and the hospitals in Missouri's biggest cities are no exception. Virus hospitalizations have risen sharply across Missouri in recent weeks. Thursday, hospitalizations hit 3,526 total. That's more than 700 cases higher than last year's peak. The head of the Mercy Transfer Center in St. Louis says her hospital has had to frequently turn down transfer requests from smaller hospitals that are becoming overwhelmed with the virus. Last week, local health professionals told us they'd seen an increase in hospitalizations, but so far they're keeping up with the workload. Chairman of the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board, who has consistently voted to spare the lives of death row inmates, is resigning at the request of the governor. Adam Luck wrote in his resignation letter that he was stepping down so Governor Kevin Stitt could appoint someone more aligned with his support for the death penalty. Stitt announced he was replacing Luck with Edward Koninski, a former police officer and head of the Episcopal Diocese of Oklahoma. Well, yesterday would have been Betty White's 100th birthday. In honor of that, the Betty White Challenge has taken social media by storm. KOAM's Chris Warner tells us what that is and how it's having an impact locally.
The hashtag Betty White Challenge has been circulating on social media for weeks now. It challenged everyone to donate $5 to their favorite animal shelter or rescue in honor of the late Betty White on what would have been her 100th birthday.
We think it's a really neat way for people to honor such an amazing woman by helping not just our shelter, but other shelters in the area.
Joplin Humane Society's Shelter Service Manager, Tiana Fisher, says this day is one of many essential to their operations.
Our shelter runs on donations, so it's extremely important to us to receive those donations. All of our dog food and cat food is completely donated.
As for what the donated dog and cat food goes, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. As for the monetary donations,
the monetary donations goes towards taking care of the animals, towards shots and spaying and neutering, and just making sure that they have everything that they need to get into a forever home and be successful.
While the Humane Society is grateful for a special day of donations, Fisher says it's not the only time they need help.
Donations are definitely needed year-round. We are very fortunate here in Southwest Missouri to have an amazing community who always steps up and helps when we are in need, and we really appreciate them for all of their support.
In Joplin, Chris Warner, KOAM News.
So far, the Joplin Humane Society has raised more than $3,400 just through Facebook. A famous auction house thinks this rare black diamond is from out of this world, literally. Monday, Sotheby's unveiled this fancy black diamond called the Enigma as part of its luxury sales series. The gem's origin is a mystery, but officials believe it was either created after a meteoric impact or from a diamond-bearing asteroid that collided with Earth. The diamond is 555.5 carats. It was listed as the world's largest cut diamond in the 2006 Guinness Book of World Records. Bidding starts next month.
So this thing's on tour. It's on tour in Dubai, and then it goes to LA.
Do you know where that would look like?
Get out of the way of the beautiful moon here. Hello, the orb. You think it would fit?
I'd make it work.
Anyway, this thing's on tour in LA and Dubai. Okay?
Yeah. I just want a piece of
Well,
it.
somebody's got to be in charge of getting it from point A to point B. No pressure, right? Carrie, you do not want that job.
No, I wouldn't give it, I would just take it and run.
Oh, you just take it and run.
Carrie and I decided we're going to cut it in half and share it.
We'll just split it.
Like my palms get sweaty just thinking about having to be the person that has to transport that from point A to point B. Oh, it would be a great movie though. You know, two morning show
The Black
anchors
Diamond Run.
that pull off a diamond heist. We'll simply call the name of our Netflix movie Carbonado. Just think about if anybody's an independent movie producer out there and wants to rope us into a role where we pull off the biggest diamond heist in the world en route from LA to Dubai, Tanya and I, we are your actors. Live look over 7th and Rangeline, what's left of our full moon. Technically it was full last night, but still a gorgeous sight right here. We'll have a couple more minutes of it before it sinks below the horizon, but it's the wolf moon, as that's what our January moon is called. And coming up here in just a little bit, we'll also share some pictures from our good friend Emmett Sullivan, who got some high-res photos you're not going to want to miss. 42 degrees right now over Joplin, just a marvelous beginning to a January morning. We do have a wide range of temperatures. One point out down to the south here, Miami and Grove, because they sat at 32 degrees seemingly forever, and now have had a very, very quick jump, almost up to 40. So just about to join Chanute in the 40-degree club as well. Neosho's already there, and Monette will be right behind. All the snow along the Canadian border, this will not be like the system we had last week. This will continue to move toward the Great Lakes. But this cold Canadian air, it is not going to be able to avoid us. That being said, it's a gorgeous Tuesday throughout most of the Midwest. Little cloud cover out to the west and the south, but no precipitation to worry about. And highs today in the mid-50s, good 10 degrees above where we'd anticipate being on the 18th of January. A little bit of cloud cover wants to build here as we work into the afternoon hours, but it's not heavy cloud cover by any means. Still be about partly sunny. Then we can talk about what's impending for us, because as we get into midnight/Wednesday morning, number one, massive cold front drops down. Number two, Gulf moisture formulates rain south of I-44. Number three, cold front flips some of that into freezing rain, perhaps even a dusting of snow down to the south. Now, the majority of the 4 states, you can tell, will remain dry, but we're really going to concentrate any travel impacts on those southerly counties of southwest Missouri, and then just simply bundle up after that. Overnight lows for Wednesday and Thursday, 11 and 14. That's actual temperature, Tanya. That is not wind chill. That's actual temperature.
I don't even want to know what the wind chill is.
Well, you know what? Coming up here in just a little bit, let's talk about those wind chills.
Okay. Despite my feelings. All right, enjoy today. Omicron continues to drive new COVID infections and hospitalizations. Experts say more variants are likely to follow. And later they say goats will eat anything. We'll introduce you to a farm where the goats eat discarded Christmas trees and are loving it. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14.
Dear Winter, months on 10 of our favorite 2022 Toyota vehicles. Toyota, let's go places.
COVID infections and hospitalizations are still soaring, and experts are warning that more variants and more outbreaks are likely to follow Omicron. Laura Podesta is in New York with the latest pandemic developments.
The Omicron-driven COVID-19 surge appears to be far from over.
We are on the precipice of what will likely be the most challenging moment in this pandemic to date.
Despite signs the outbreak has leveled off in the Northeast, the U.S. continues to average around 800,000 new cases a day.
If you look at the history of infectious diseases, we've only eradicated one infectious disease in man, and that's smallpox. That's not going to happen with this virus.
The White House's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says the pandemic's trajectory is unclear, even though so many people have been vaccinated or previously infected.
The new variants can be eluding the immune response, and we're seeing that with Omicron.
Tomorrow, covidtests.gov launches. It's a White House website where Americans can order free tests.
Tests allow us to make decisions about whether we're contagious and so a threat to others, whether we can safely return in person to school or to work.
At-home COVID tests are still scarce in many areas, and long lines remain a common sight at some test locations.
Not super fun. I've been in this line almost
2 hours now.
The virus continues to upend normal life around the world. Foreign spectators had already been prohibited from next month's Olympic Games in China. Yesterday, Beijing announced that Chinese citizens would not be allowed to buy tickets either. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
The Chinese government says the Olympics will begin as scheduled on February 4th. Some health experts are criticizing the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for suggesting schools cancel some sports and activities. The CDC recently released guidance advising schools to cancel high-risk sports and extracurricular activities or hold them virtually. They included football, wrestling, and band, and pointed to the recent spike in COVID-19 cases. But an infectious disease expert called the guidance unlikely, unreasonable, and unrealistic. He worries people will not follow these suggestions. The CDC director defended the agency, saying in a statement it prioritized academics over athletics and noted when its school guidance is followed, it can be incredibly effective. A fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine could increase your antibodies to protect you from COVID-19. Monday, Israeli scientists released new preliminary data suggesting a fourth dose of either the Pfizer, BioNTech, or Moderna coronavirus vaccines enhanced or increased the number of antibodies, more than what has been seen following a third dose. However, it might not be enough to protect against a possible breakthrough infection caused by the Omicron variant. In December, Israel started trials for a fourth dose of coronavirus vaccines for healthy participants. It's the first study of its kind among healthy people receiving a fourth dose. More data is expected when the team publishes its findings. Well, a man who discovered a very rare coin could see a big payday. The amateur metal detectorist found what is thought to be one of England's first gold coins. Wow. The Henry III gold penny was unearthed on farmland in Devon. It was minted in about the year 1257. It's 1257, I guess you would say. It's one of only 8 such coins known to exist, many of which are in museums. The man who found the coin wants to remain anonymous. He didn't realize how valuable it was until he posted a photograph of the penny on Facebook. It was spotted by an expert who was in disbelief at the find. Pre-sale estimate by the British auctioneer Spink & Son in London is around $400,000 or 400,000 pounds or $546,000.
And from what I know about the story, he's just he's John Q. Public who likes to walk around with his metal detector.
Yeah.
He didn't have any formal training or anything. That's too cool. And congratulations to him as well. That's tremendous.
I wonder if he wants to remain anonymous because it was on private property where he found it.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit.
Or was it?
Live look outside of Television City with a gorgeous, gorgeous sunrise. Look at all those different colors that we have. And probably last time we'll get to see our what's left of our full moon, known as the wolf moon. But while it gets a little bit more distant and heads toward the horizon over 7th and Rangeline, we've got great people like Emmett Sullivan that give us high-resolution photos each time a full moon rolls around. Emmett took this, I believe, early in the morning of the 17th and took it from his yard right there. What an amazing, amazing shot. Emmett, thank you very much for our wolf moon. Joplin right now, Joplin Regional, sits at 42 degrees. Temperatures ranging about anywhere from 35 to up to 42, 43. Very delightful for a January morning. What we're looking at nationally, finally starting to calm down a little bit on the northeastern portion of the United States, but they've got another big system that's going to ride the Canadian border and head toward them. For us here at home, a little bit of cloud cover trying to move in out to the west, but it's going to be a pretty sunny start. Little light clouds are all that we're seeing, and even as the clouds increase, we'll be able to make it up into the 50s. Big changes as we approach midnight. They'll come in the form of, number one, the cold front that drops down. Number two, some Gulf moisture that presents itself first as rain for early Wednesday morning. That rain may even see some light sprinkles up here, but the big factor is as we get into the later morning hours, we see that begin to flip over. Could see some freezing drizzle and even a dusting of snow there in the far southern portion of southwest Missouri. The other key factor, how cold it's going to be. Wednesday's wind chills continue to drop to the single digits, and then we get into the negative numbers for Thursday morning. So it's going to be a multi-layer affair if you need to be out and about on Wednesday or Thursday, not just during the morning or at night, but really all day long. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Indigo.
Many a person looking for a creative outlet during the pandemic, some for minds, some for sanity, and a whole lot of new hobbies have been picked up. One that has exploded in popularity is knitting, a hobby that many people may associate with your grandmother. But in Minnesota, there's a growing group of men who, it turns out, love to knit. Susan Elizabeth Littlefield with their story.
And so we were literally turning it inside out, trying to figure out where they had sewn the line, sewn the sleeves in. And then we both went, oh, it's acrylic. It's acrylic.
They all have their projects.
Zach Anderson, I am making the Melting Marl Shawl by Stephen West.
Knitting a little simple fisherman hat.
And they all have their reasons.
For me, it's a creative outlet.
Great social outlet. I mean, you're coming to a like community of people who are all excited about what they're working on and what they're doing.
I love all the color that I get to play with and the amount of individuality I can put into my projects.
And like every project, they all had a starting point.
I actually started knitting when I was about 6 years old. My mother was a knitter and I watched her do it and she showed me how, and so that's kind of where I started.
I taught myself basically when I was trying to quit smoking. And it was a way for me to keep my hands busy.
Did it work?
And it did. I haven't smoked since. And that's 20 years now.
It's an art form that can be healthy and healing.
When my mom passed away, I inherited all of her stuff. With the use of YouTube, I watched a bunch of videos on how to knit.
Jay has since become advanced, creating patterns and selling his work to people around the country.
Does it feel like a connection to your mom?
It does. I mean, I still have some of her needles.
And for many, fiber arts are associated with mothers and grandmothers.
But when I was, 7, 8, 10 years old and going to a yarn shop, and the normally thing would be, do you have a note from your mom to pick up what she needs?
Bill is advanced too. He's currently creating a freehand sweater without any seams.
And then all of a sudden they started taking me a little bit more serious.
Yeah, this guy's legit.
Yeah, he's not just here for pick up women or whatever it was that they thought it was there to do.
But he says patterns are changing. The men are all part of a Twin Cities men's knitting club with more than 60 members.
It's really nice to find other guys who actually are, excited about yarn and textile creation and the different things you can do with it and color work.
And they're good at it.
Well, and yeah.
While the pandemic prompted many to give it a shot,
this morning I made a little cozy.
So did a gold-winning Olympian who knitted between dives.
So here it is.
Definitely saw an upsurge in the interest of men and getting into knitting because of Tom Daly breaking that stigma to think that it's really something that only a woman would like to do. It's actually very therapeutic.
And as it turns out, it's not just about the lines they knit.
I like the center one.
It's about the circles they create.
But it's like you're knitting people together too.
Yes. Well, you're creating the fiber, but you're also creating the relationships and friendships of the group.
Men's Knitting Club Twin Cities has an active group on Facebook if you want to look them up. They meet at coffee shops, breweries, and yarn shops. We'll be back with this morning's four-state hero right after this.
At some casino.
It's time to honor today's four-state hero, Jared Beechner, private first class in the United States Army. He served in Iraq, where he earned the Marksmanship Award as a sharpshooter. A native of Erie, Kansas, we thank you, Private First Class Jared Beechner, today's four-state hero. Well, you've heard the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But in this next story, it's goats at a farm in Spring Valley, Wisconsin that are the real winners, happily snacking on discarded Christmas trees. Kristen Mitchell has their story.
Hey, goats! At Scapegoats Farm in Spring Valley, Wisconsin. Dana Myers' mode of transportation is just as unconventional as the farm's origin.
I had no intentions of ever having a farm or doing any kind of ranching activities, so.
But like most things in life,
just happened, yep.
About 5 years ago, his property in Somerset was invaded by buckthorn plants. So he bought a few goats to munch it away and keep the problem at bay.
So anyway, yeah, the neighbors, they all wanted them, and next thing you know, we got 30 goats.
His project turned into a word-of-mouth buckthorn mitigation company.
So we have about 150 that are out grazing during the summer, and then we have our about 50 Australian cashmeres.
Picking their names is as easy as eeny, meeny, miny.
Hey, Mo.
The goats are anywhere from 8 months to 4 to 5 years old. They all have their own personalities and names. This one here is Cinnamon Roll.
Come on, girls.
In the winter, the goats take on a second job.
Come on.
Our tinsel-free trash is their tasty treasure.
The trees offer antioxidants and trace minerals, a lot of vitamin A, a lot of vitamin C.
Word of his Christmas tree recycling spread like wildfire this year.
Going into the landfill doesn't really do any good.
Hundreds of trees were donated from across Minnesota and Wisconsin. Some families even visited the farm to see the goats themselves.
Seeing the joy it brings to people, it's just so cool. I mean, everyone just loves them.
Well, scapegoats, which by the way, I love that name, they may partner with a neighboring city one day for a Christmas tree recycling program. It's pretty cool. Another half hour of news and weather is just ahead. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, we meet Buddy the dog who got his head stuck in a wall and how he's faring after his rescue. And it's a question that's been asked time and time again. Who betrayed Anne Frank? There may be an answer to that question now. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We'll be right back.
Area hearing.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:31. Let's take a look at today's top stories. In honor of Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy, Fort Scott Community College holds a presentation about a sit-in that happened in the 4 states known as the Dockham Drugstore Sit-In. Now, this sit-in happened in Wichita in 1958. Black students gathered at the drugstore to stage a peaceful protest against segregation. The guest speaker at Monday's event was the founder of Storytime Village, a nonprofit that promotes reading among low-income families.
We're showing some of the films on the civil rights movement during that time period. And also, we're having a day of service. So Martin Luther King Day, yes, is a day off, and we consider it a day on too. So we're doing a camp food drive and non-perishable items too as well to give to our local food pantry, the Beacon Food Pantry here in Fort Scott, Kansas.
The Gordon Parks Museum hosted screenings of the film Eyes on the Prize, American Civil Rights and Martin, a tribute to Dr. King written and directed by Gordon Parks. Fort Scott Community College wasn't the only one honoring Martin Luther King Jr. yesterday. Pitt State also hosted a ceremony honoring Dr. King. The university held a candlelight vigil and a short program featuring a song, a reading of King's historic letter from a Birmingham jail, and reflections on how King still impacts people to this day.
It means the right to even be at the school, you know, because once upon a time, years ago during segregation, this may not have been possible for students of color to even attend a university in this area. So it means a lot to me, especially as a parent with small children, that they have opportunities that other people only dreamed of.
Pitt State's MLK Day ceremony took place on the campus oval. As the U.S. grapples with voting rights, Martin Luther King Jr. holiday has again become political. King's family is urging the U.S. Senate to pass a new federal voting rights standard just one day before the chamber is expected to take up the stalled legislation. John Lawrence explains where things stand.
On a day celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, his family is calling for action.
Today, my message to you is simple. Do not celebrate, legislate.
People from more than 100 national and grassroots organizations joined the King family in a march in Washington, D.C. They're demanding Congress pass the voting rights legislation.
Don't tell us what you believe in, show us with your votes.
The legislation would give the federal government more oversight in setting voting regulations. Vice President Kamala Harris echoing the King family's call.
This bill represents the first real opportunity to secure the freedom to vote,
since the United States Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act nearly a decade ago.
They're hoping to put pressure on Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. While both senators support voting rights reform, they oppose changing filibuster rules to get it passed.
Eliminating the 60-vote threshold will simply guarantee that we lose a critical tool that we need to safeguard our democracy.
No matter the outcome, the heirs to Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy vowed to keep fighting.
We must keep the pressure on and say no more empty words.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Well, today the nation celebrates a silly old bear. January 18th is National Winnie the Pooh Day. The unofficial holiday coincides with his creator's birthday. A.A. Milne based his stories about the fictional honey-loving bear on a black bear at the London Zoo during World War I. The author's son, Christopher Robin, adored the bear and is a featured character in his dad's stories. Disney brought the rights to Winnie the Pooh in the 1960s, but the original iteration of the character is in the public domain after its copyright expired this year. I did not know that.
Winnie the Pooh hit public domain.
Huh.
Sun Also Rises, Lawrence of Arabia. There's several that hit the public domain January 1. So you could write a sequel.
Winnie the Pooh.
You go into fighting Disney eventually if you. Oh, you know what's not public domain?
I have a dog that jumps just like Tigger.
So this is kind of interesting. When January 1 hit, Tigger is not public domain.
Ooh, okay.
Because
that's okay. We could do Winnie the Pooh and my dog named Benny.
You could do that.
Yep.
You could do that.
Could be
Don't
friends.
put Pooh in that red shirt.
Yeah.
You don't want Disney come hunt you down. They'll come and find you now. Hello, Glow Cloud. Live look outside of Television City. Absolutely gorgeous morning. Look at all the different hues that we have over 7th and Rangeline. 42 degrees is where we sit right now. 40 in Chanute, 41 in Miami and Grove, as well as Lamar and Nevada. This is really interesting. As down south, Miami and Grove were sitting right at the freezing mark all morning long, and now I've seen a great 9-degree jump. Every now and then we're seeing little patches of wind kick up in excess of 10 miles per hour. No precipitation to worry about. Even when we put on the sweeping radar, a little cloud cover has moved in from the west. All the snow, that'll stay up by the Canadian border. The cold temperatures, they will not stay up by the Canadian border. They will be on us and get on us tonight for sure. Still going to make it up into the mid-50s later on this afternoon. Then what we'll see is tremendous cold temperatures drop in from Canada. We see the emergence of some rain here early Wednesday morning. The problematic issue is going to be that right there. Possibility of some freezing drizzle in the southern portion of southwest Missouri, and also too very well could get a dusting of snow. The majority of the 4 states remains perfectly dry. But as you work down to the south, want everybody ready for that morning commute for Wednesday, and then everybody just bundle up. This is going to be frigid. Highs in the 20s on Wednesday and Thursday. Overnight lows below 15 degrees. We'll be back right after this.
Why is it when someone says, I'm toast, it's not a good thing?
I'd be happy.
On the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our morning Insta poll, we're talking about voting rights. That's our question, is coming off of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday yesterday. Grassroots and national movements marched on Washington, D.C., demanding that the U.S. Senate change voting rights, whether it be instituting it at the age of 18, just being able to open and access it more often. Our question for you this morning is, how often do you vote? Right now, 71% of you say always, no matter what the issue at the ballot, you are there. 21% partake in national-only elections, and 8% of you decide not to exercise that right. Appreciate everybody's engagement. Remember, you can always hit us up on Facebook or go directly to the poll, koamnewsnow.com/vote. Got an interesting story about a dog named Buddy. Now, Buddy's recovering after he got his head stuck in a wall. Rescuers had to chip away the brick to free him. Venton Blandon explains just how Buddy got himself into this conundrum.
Thousands of animals needing emergency care throughout the valley make for a lot of late nights for the Arizona Humane Society. One dog's recent ordeal led to a 3-day stay at the trauma hospital. Buddy, a 2-year-old pit bull terrier mix, got away from his owner, noticed another dog near 35th Avenue and Broadway, and then got his head stuck in a block wall.
The other dog was not very appreciative of him being there and then proceeded to bite him multiple times on the head.
Someone called the Arizona Humane Society an emergency text, spent about 20 minutes chiseling away Brick to rescue Buddy.
All right, look at that, bud.
Humane Society staff would then reunite Buddy with his owner thanks to a map created by Maricopa County Animal Care and Control.
Buddy's owner was actually on that map and was able to see that her pet was found not too far from where she lost him, and she found all the information to contact us, and that's how she came to us.
Buddy's owner, the Humane Society says, had no idea the dog had ended up stuck in that wall.
The dog is one of the friendliest dogs that I've ever seen. Like, you wouldn't have imagined that he just went through this whole ordeal.
The doctor says those who work in this animal trauma hospital take in about 10,000 calls a year for animals who are sick, injured, and stray. The doctor makes sure to point out if you see an animal in need like this, no matter what, do not approach, even though it's tempting.
So for the experts to handle it really is the best approach. You know, they're trained in it, they have all the tools and supplies needed for that, and it's the best option for the animal.
Good boy!
There you go, all's well that ends well. We'll be back with consumer news right after this.
Ashley Home Store.
Starbucks, Chipotle, and McDonald's join the list of companies shortening store hours due to staff shortages. Starbucks announced this week customers may experience a lack of products and services in some locations due to lack of staff. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Popular food chain Chipotle is also having difficulties staying open in regular hours due to not having enough staff to cover the shifts. The Journal also reported other companies like El Pollo Loco, Shake Shack, and others are struggling the same way due to the same issue and chain supply problems. With the Omicron variant continuing its surge across the country, pharmacies are struggling to keep up with demands in medicine, testing, and vaccines. Jerry Willis reports on the story.
With record Omicron caseloads and flu season underway, the nation's pharmacies are struggling to keep up with demand amid worker shortages. A Walgreens spokeswoman saying this: the ongoing labor shortage combined with the surge of COVID-19 cases has resulted in isolated instances in which we've had to adjust operating hours or temporarily close a limited number of stores. Worker shortages are especially acute among pharmacy technicians, the staffing personnel who count pills, fill medication bottles, and make sure patients get the right medications. But heightened job pressures due to COVID is leading some to find jobs with better pay and working conditions in other health fields, like radiation and nuclear medicine, where pay is double.
So we're seeing that it's so critical. And again, that's because we had turnover problems before. COVID made it worse. And now we have people have to be quarantined because they're sick. So we have an acute crisis, and that happens every time we have a spike.
But pharmacists are also reaching a break point. One survey by an Ohio regulator last April found half of pharmacists in the Buckeye State say they don't have enough time to complete their jobs safely. Vaccine mix-ups have been reported in states from Texas to Maryland, where there have been isolated reports of people getting flu shots rather than the COVID-19 vaccine. In New York, Jerry Willis, Fox News.
Americans are receiving premature collection notices from the IRS due to the agency's massive backlog. The IRS is sending these notices even to Americans that filed their returns on time. According to a report from the National Taxpayer Advocate, the agency took too long to process the taxpayers' responses. Therefore, it delayed not only refunds, but prompted early collection notices. The report estimates that the agency had a backlog late last year of more than 8.6 million unprocessed reports that will likely trigger the processing time to 6 months or more. Social media giant is looking to fight against misinformation on its platform. Twitter is expanding its test of a feature allowing users to flag false or misleading content. Feature was first tested in the U.S., Australia, and South Korea back in August and is now expanding to Brazil, Spain, and the Philippines. Twitter says they've received around 3 million reports since the feature has been tested. This is just one of many features the social media giant has created to battle fake information, including a program allowing users to provide more content to misleading tweets. We'll be right back with more after this, but first, let's take a look at the market prices before the opening bell.
It's a touchdown, football fans. $6. Arby's, we have the meats.
Case was cold, but over the last 5 years, researchers have painstakingly pieced together clues they believe help solve the mystery of how Anne Frank's family remained successfully hidden from Nazis for years, only to be eventually captured. Lauren Blanchard has the story on just who may have surrendered their location to the Nazis.
The name of Anne Frank is not someone, it's the icon of the Holocaust.
To countless people around the world, Anne Frank resembles resiliency, hope, and compassion, even in the darkest of hours. But behind this extraordinary person lies a great deal of mystery and a dark, cold case. Researchers have wondered how the Nazis were able to find the Franks in their secret hideaway above a warehouse in Amsterdam. Now they may have their answers.
We have investigated over 30 suspects in 20 different scenarios, leaving one scenario.
While they aren't 100% sure, investigators have what they're calling the most likely scenario, identifying a Jewish man by the name of Arnold Vandenberg as their primary suspect, claiming Vandenberg allegedly gave Nazis a list of addresses where Jews were hiding in order to protect his own family from being sent to concentration camps.
I think the information the team came up with, it gives us, again, I would say, insights in ourselves, in what it means to be human under very difficult circumstances.
The team used an anonymous note written to Anne Frank's father after World War II ended, listing Vandenberg as having involvement in Frank's family's capture.
How did fascism creep between the cracks and corrupted every human relationship?
Historians say the findings are impressive, but warn about making serious allegations when researchers themselves claim to not have the full story yet. Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Almost feels like it opens up a box of more questions than answers there, mainly if Otto Frank knew who it was, how come he never came forward, and there's speculation that he did so to protect that man's daughters, so they didn't have to carry on that throughout their lives as well. Beautiful look outside of Television City here, and a nice Tuesday start over 7th and Rangeline. 42 degrees, can't beat that for early morning January. 37 in Parsons, 39 in Monette. Let's roll 39 as well in Pittsburgh. Starting to see some cloud cover move in there from the west, but everything is dry throughout the entire Midwest for the most part. All that snow, that'll stay up to the far north. Eventually up into the mid-50s today, so a good 10 degrees above normal. And then comes the cold front. Progressively through the afternoon, it'll work its way through. Still won't slow us down temperature-wise because it really won't be upon us until we get into early Wednesday morning. But once Wednesday morning arrives, number one, boom, that begins to drop. Number two, Gulf moisture starts as rain. And for the most part, little freezing drizzle as it gets colder and colder, perhaps even a dusting of snow south of I-44 for our far southern counties of southwest Missouri. And then look at these wind chill numbers as we progress from Wednesday into Thursday. We are throwing up negatives. Make sure you've got as many layers as you can get ready for today. And that way you're prepared when tomorrow night hits. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Here's what's happening today. COVID cases fueled by the Omicron variant keep surging, and health officials say the peak in the U.S. is still a few weeks away. There is one piece of promising news. Cases in the Northeast are beginning to slow down after hitting records the past couple of weeks. Tomorrow, the White House will launch a new website, covidtest.gov, where Americans can place orders for free at-home COVID tests. The FBI says the hostage situation at a Texas synagogue was a terror-related anti-Semitic attack. The suspect, 44-year-old Malik Fashil Akram, was killed. All of the hostages escaped unharmed. CBS News has learned the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to local law enforcement warning that there could be future attacks on faith-based communities. Parts of the Northeast and Midwest are digging out after a big snowstorm hit over the weekend and into Monday. Tens of thousands were left without power. The storm system also brought freezing rain to sections of the East Coast and tornadoes to Florida. Let's check in with Michael with a final look at your forecast.
Great looking Tuesday. Partly sunny skies. Highs around 55, 56 degrees later on this afternoon. Overnight, we know the cold front is a-coming. Be here Wednesday morning. It's going to be brutally cold there Wednesday and Thursday night.
Well, a deer owes its comfort to some Colorado parks and wildlife officers working near Denver. Well, you see, it got its head stuck in this lid. It's possibly from a recycling or feed container. It actually looks a lot like the so-called cone of shame. You know, the ones that pet owners use to keep animals from bothering a wound. The officers found the animal and they were able to remove the lid.
See, just like Buddy, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, happy ending.
We did a show of stuck animals today. With all happy endings, I do want to point that out.
Yes.
And so that's why we say thank you for letting us put the good in your morning. We'll be back with more news and weather when we see you at noon.
Have a great morning and an even better day.
A home that